Okay. Okay. Good morning, everyone. Today I'll be facilitating the topic of the day for the sessions. Using a data-driven business strategy to show you the reality check. So it was done by Ernst and it's a big accounting firm. Then say they want to make a decision and
Hello, everyone. Seems it's having network issues. Let's just wait some minutes to see if he'll join back.
it was kind of bad. So I switched to a better network. Let me start over.
All right, you're audible now.
Okay. Okay, let's just continue from where we stopped. So Ernest and Young, they did a study and they found that 81% of businesses agreed that that organization should be more data driven, and only 31% have actually restructured their operations to actually be data driven. And then the remaining 56% have just admitted that it's just a slogan. So you might hear in the organization, we are data driven, but in reality, they are not at all. Now, this is a serious issue. So there's a big gap in the business or organization where they want to be data driven and they're not executing being data driven. And that's going to be causing them to lose lots of millions. While their competitors who are data driven are going to be making the millions amount of money while they are not. So that's that. Okay. So what is a data driven business? Short answer, a data-driven business is just a decisions based on facts, not feelings. So practically, we're talking about leaders or executives who use evidence, who use facts, who use information to build their whole business strategy. They're not just looking at the product teams are running tests. They're going to run tests and then experiments before they make any decision. They're going to be measurable feedback and all that. So when you look at data driven, it's all about decision based on fact. I'm going to give an example shortly. So let's look at Netflix. Now, Netflix, You all know what it is. They always have shows on Netflix, but they don't just decide which show goes on Netflix just based on their feelings. They actually look at the viewing patterns, completion rates, and other micro signals, other information and data before they actually decide, okay, we're going to bring this show on Netflix and it's going to do well. Yeah, so many of the shows we see, some might turn pretty, so many of them, those are the recent ones that are here, is because they have analyzed what people like to watch. They've analyzed even the time they like to watch and what's really the in thing now. Okay, it's not just based on, oh, I feel this is the in thing, and then they just go and do that. That's going to cost them millions. So far, Netflix is a data-driven company. Now, if you compare that to a company that is not data-driven, they just use their feelings or their instincts, which is how most of the world before we got this data boom have been doing. But it's going to cost you millions if you're wrong because you can't just be using your feelings. The data does not lie, right? So I ask you, the audience, that you should trust data over your instincts far more, okay? And now, so when you look at businesses, now let's look at the business case of this. Why bother being data driven? So studies have shown that data driven organizations are more productive, they are more profitable. They show that they grow 20 30% faster. They are way better at acquiring and retaining customers. Bluntly speaking, it's not optional. If you're a business and you want to actually succeed, you want to be successful, you want to grow, you need to be data driven. You can't be going by, I feel we should work on this product, I feel we should put this out there. You should not be using your feeling because every single company that is successful today are data driven, all of them. So as we discussed earlier, we noticed that there was a discrepancy between organization or businesses that want to be data driven and a huge amount of them are not being data driven in their business. So there are lots of reasons for that because at the end of the day, being data driven is very difficult. It's hard to implement. Although the problem that I've seen is that 60% of the problem that I've seen from organizations that are trying to be data driven is that it's a people problem. Okay, there are lots of tools that have been created, made over years, and they're all right, they're all working fine. But I've noticed that the issue is that they don't capture, one of the issues is that they don't capture the right data. They're studying, they're analyzing the wrong data points and then they come to a wrong conclusion and they work on a product that is wrong and then it fails in the markets. Sometimes the culture might resist change. If the company wasn't data driven before, but now they're trying to be, but the culture isn't there. So you also need to have the culture. The executives, they don't trust the numbers, which is interesting, but they don't trust the numbers. And the worst of all, their strategy is not aligned with the business. So as you can see from these challenges I outlined, the problem is the people. It's not the tools. The tools are fine. It's the people, the processes, and their alignments. So I'm going to give you three alignment processes that you can use to help yourself and be a more data-driven organization. So you need to find the strategic objective. Again, remember, this is a people problem. So if you're going to be starting as a business, you need to pick a goal that actually matters. And then you need to also link you need to now brainstorm the data, look at the objectives, work on your KPI, and then obviously you now engage the executive, you present the ROI and ask them to sponsor one of your experiments. And lots of these data-driven strategies is just based on tests and experiments. You try out a product, you bring in a minimum viable product, okay, you build a very minimum version of it. People respond to it, you look at the data, and if the data is telling you, okay, we should put this product out there, you should. If it's not telling you that, forget about it, ask the project. Do not use your feelings when you're doing any of this. And then, of course, if it's a go ahead, you can now build it at scale. That is how big organizations That's how big organizations handle things. Okay. So, okay. So now let's look at now when you're thinking about making decisions in data, it's very important to focus on the critical data because not all data are created equally. You have to prioritize what truly matters. So I'm going to give you like just key decision making like processes that you can use to like help you make better decisions. So this is the flow. You need to There are different levels, the external factors, the required data, and then the outcome. So the point of all this is that you're not holding everything. You're collecting all the different data points that can actually make decisions. Now the focus on this is to remove noise. Okay, because there's so many noise in data because you can take in a whole bunch of data that are meaningless to your organization, that are completely meaningless. So it's very important to clear the noise. You should think to yourself, what's the required data? What's the outcome? Does it matter in the markets? And then you should now leverage that, and you should now use that information to make your decisions. So there are common roadblocks that hinder data, that hinder organizations that wait, there are common roadblocks that hinder progress in your data journey in making a more data-driven business. So again, there is no clear owners or governance. There is bad data quality. There is executives are not engaged. They don't believe in the data. There is the data literacy across the staff is fragmented or is short staff. So a lot of this is just the culture. The executives don't believe in the data. They don't understand how important this is. And again, the data that are studying, that are analyzing is either it's completely off the mark or it's just not important. So again, so in order to help yourself, it's important to create a culture that is no resistance to change. They need to prefer that they need to know that they need to trust what the data is saying. As much as they should trust the data, they should also make sure that the data that they're trusting is actually correct, that is consistent. It's huge. Again, huge amounts of data is very important. You can't be making decisions based on just small amounts of data. So those are the things that hinder progress, and at the same time, these things also help you. Okay. Again, so what hinder roadblocks? Just some statistics that are grim. We find out that 42% of data owners, 42% have no data owners, leading to disorganization. And then we look at the data quality issues that we discussed, a whole 37%. And then for the executive disinterest, because they don't believe the data, they prefer in their business intelligence, which is fine, but it's not fine because you do need to, because nowadays, no, nowadays, right now, data-driven businesses are the ones that are successful. And again, half of the we have low data literacy. So across the entire organization, nobody is really adopting, the employees are not really adopting these data-driven mindsets. So it's important to address all these challenges we want for success. So the path forward. Now, this is the success framework you should work with. I'll just give you, these are just a short practical sequence. You need to start with business decisions, not the technology, because as I said, the technologies are there, that are working, that have been created over years. It's fine. The problem is the people. So your business decision you need to start from there. And then the executive, the CEOs, the executive and the CEOs, trust, they need to trust this data. So if you're going to bring out the products, test it, there has to be a small ROI. Like I explained, you need to start with a minimum viable product, and then if the data is showing that you should go ahead with it, you should. You should establish data ownership and governance. You should focus on a few critical metrics. Now, for that, that depends on the organization that you're working for. And then you should also measure wins. You should communicate the value continuously. It's an iterative process that you have to start small, measurable, and then you keep going like that. So if you have implemented all of this, and if you've implemented all the people parts of the business, and now you're asking for the tools that you need. There are several tools that you could use that organizations already use for their data in case you need it. Either you can learn it yourself or you can hire someone that already has the skill sets to use these tools so they can run the numbers down for you. So you could learn Google Sheets or Excel. Now, for a small organization, you can learn Google Sheets and Excel, you can learn Power BI, Tableau. Now, all these tools serve different processes. Are just collecting the data in a database, some are just for the graphical side of things. So it all depends. Now, if you're a small business, I recommend that you make use of Excel and then a short AI script or Zapier, and then you're good to go as a small business. Or either you can just hire someone with a stack and then you're good to go. So the next steps that you should make is that you should address data. Now, your next steps after all this is to access the data maturity, the people, make sure that literate enough to understand how important data is, the processes, the technology you're using. You need to pick one critical decision to improve on. You need to build a short business case with a very clear return on investments. You need to run it, measure, and then report the wins. Do just this and then have a repeatable pattern for success. So thank you very much. Does anyone have questions?
All right, Michael,
You
I
can
see you have a
ask.
question. Sir Michael, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. You can go ahead with your
Yeah, I can
question.
hear you.
Okay, so my question is how how what kind of advice do you have for companies that use data-driven businesses to navigate maybe the creative industry, like maybe while using Netflix and Spotify? Those companies tend to be too obsessed with quality over quantity, especially when it comes to just focusing or obsessing over data. They tend to just ignore um, just generally just ignore quality, even if the data says some particular product or some particular releases can bring in more money. How do you create like a kind of balance, even though the data says, yeah, this kind of particular product or this genre of music can bring in more users, can bring in more yeah, watchers, especially maybe Netflix shows that are low quality but have a lot of users. How will businesses be able to create a balance where they can invest in higher quality movies that can maybe rake in awards, even if they don't make enough money, compared to lower quality products that's breaking enough engagements? I'm not sure if you understand my question.
Okay. I think I understand your question. So for that, for companies that are, if I'm understanding what you're saying, they want to bring in, like, use your Netflix example, shows that have the quality, even though they're not making as much money as Netflix, but they're still bringing in shows that are of great quality, that are good that are good, that will make win awards and all that, while still making just enough money, but not as much as the big ones. Now, my advice for organizations or businesses like that is all this depends on the culture of the company, their mission statements, you could say. Now, some companies, they value profits. That's just the truth. They value profits over quality. And just like we've seen sometimes with Netflix, that are so data obsessed, they value profit. That's the ROI. So if you're a company that values quality over profit, you just have to accept that you might not make as much money as other organizations that are just so profit oriented like Netflix. You're going to have to be willing to sacrifice your profits in the long run. You're still going to be profitable, mind you, but you're just going to have to sacrifice your profit in the long run. So it's all about just your vision statements, your mission statement, and the culture and the value you have for your organization. Does that answer your question? Thank you.
Yes, it does. Thank you. Yeah.
All right. So does anyone have any more questions? No? Okay.
All right, then. If there are no questions,
All right. Thank you very much.
thank you, Seth, for your presentation. That was very engaging. And thank you all for joining. We can call it a day today. Tomorrow's session will be a session held by the management team. There's going to be an update that will be shared to everyone. So please ensure to join the session on time so you don't miss any of the updates. Thank you all for joining and do have a very productive day.